Good morning, everyone. Lauren, brothers and sisters of Trooper Brian Frank, Governor, Senators, Representatives, men and women of the Illinois State Police, and all first responders, thank you for being here today. The ISP takes great pride in being a professional, knowledgeable agency that serves all, ever ready with the facts and statistics that we need to drive the mission. And there are many disturbing statistics that bring us here, but I'll keep the statistics simple today. How many troopers and other first responders have been struck by drivers violating the move over law? Too many. How many have been killed by drivers violating the move over law? Too many. How many hospital bedsides have I been at with friends and family of one of our injured or dying troopers? Too many. How many graduations and birthdays and anniversaries will be missed? How many spouses and parents and children will suffer unspeakable heartache because of the callous decisions of others? Too many. Governor, how many funerals have we been together for a fallen trooper? How many tears have been shed? Too many. How many first responders will suffer in silence with the burdens of duty, with mental and physical scars that wears down their hearts and souls? How many will we lose to substance abuse and death by suicide because we failed to see their pain, failed to be there for them, failed to help them rise back up? Too many. As a state, as a people, everyone here, we are all continuously involved in the pursuit of justice, justice for all people in all its forms. It is specifically my duty as the shepherd of this agency, privileged to serve with these brave men and women, to say clearly and unequivocally that there is no justice without the law, and there is no law without law enforcement. And there is no law enforcement without the kind of rare, special souls who are willing to die for that, who are willing to risk it all for justice and safety for all. They are the few who quietly dedicate their careers and their lives to serving the public and helping others, without fanfare, without glory, and often without as much as a thank you. But they do it because they believe in it, because they have been called to do it. Every day they brave ever-present danger to assist a stranded motorist, to investigate gun and drug human trafficking, and to stop dangerous driving and dangerous individuals. The least anyone can do is slow down and move over. Not just because it's the law, but because it's the right thing to do. Slow down and move over and respect people like Trooper Brian Frank. Protect those who protect you. Show some love to those who serve, because love is the reason that they serve you. And thank God for men and women like Brian. Thank God for people like Lauren. We all need to look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, do we deserve them? Do we deserve the men and women who serve in law enforcement? Do we deserve people like Brian Frank, Anella French? And if you ask yourself and you aren't sure, I suggest you do something about it, which is what we are doing here today. Words of encouragement and support are appreciated, but words are not enough. Action, large or small, and real is what counts. I know the governor agrees, and that's what brings us together today. Not just words, but continued action to support those who I know are near and dear to his heart. And that's why it's my privilege to introduce Governor Pritzker.
Well, thank you very much to Director Kelly. Illinois has the best and most admired state police in the entire nation, and I am grateful for your service and that of each and every trooper who commits their lives to the values of ISP: integrity, service, and pride. I also want to express my gratitude to our state fire marshal, Matt Perez, who's here with us today. Matt has brought experience and passion to the job of regulating fire safety and maintaining the highest standards for our fire officials across our state. Our first responders face intense physical and mental health challenges every single day on the job. Emergency professionals experience higher rates of depression and PTSD and suicide than the general population. Some make the ultimate sacrifice, laying their life on the line in the name of service. Indeed, earlier this year, we lost Senior Master Trooper Todd Hannikin from our state police. And this past weekend, Chicago police officer Ella French was brutally murdered in a traffic stop. Another young hero lost too soon to gun violence, while her partner is still struggling in the hospital. I'd like to ask all of us to give them a moment of silent prayer. When we are in a crisis, first responders show up with the tools, the skills, and the courage to help us at a moment's notice without hesitation. I believe it's our profound responsibility to provide our heroes with the protection and the resources they need to make their work safer. Over the last 2 years, in partnership with the General Assembly, Illinois has strengthened Scott's Law, increasing penalties for violating drivers. We took action to make mental wellness resources more accessible to those who work in public safety, helping them recover from traumatic events such as accidents and injuries. And earlier this month, I signed into law our FOID modernization bill, which enhances law enforcement's knowledge of who is and isn't a legal gun owner and properly funds safe, effective enforcement efforts to remove firearms from people who have lost their right to own a gun. Today, we make even more progress in the effort to keep our first responders safe. I'll sign 3 more measures that will not only improve the enforcement of Scott's Law, but will enhance the mental health resources available to our first responders. All of these new laws had unanimous bipartisan support in the General Assembly because in Illinois, the safety and support of our first responders is an issue around which responsible leaders come together. I want to first recognize today's bill sponsors: Leader Tony Munoz, Senators Julie Morrison and Rob Martwick, as well as Representatives Janet Yang Rohr, Lindsay LaPointe, and Fran Hurley. Your work to create these new protections and resources will help make our responders' work easier and safer, and builds on the groundwork that we laid in 2019 with the help of Leader Munoz and Leader Jay Hoffman and a coalition, again, of bipartisan lawmakers. State Senator Steve McClure and State Representative Mike Murphy, who are here with us today, have been steadfast supporters of our first responders and once again demonstrated that as leading members of the Republican caucus in support of these bills. As a result of these new laws, starting January 1st, courts have an enhanced menu of options for holding Scott's Law violators accountable, adding community service as an additional consequence for those whose recklessness endangers police officers, firefighters, tow truck drivers, EMS professionals, all of those whose livelihoods take them to the sides of our roadways across the state. We're also further clarifying a driver's duty for how to respond to an emergency scene on the road so that the protections of Scott's Law can be wielded to their fullest extent. This is not an optional precaution. It is the law. Of course, it's not enough to just punish violating drivers. We need to prevent these accidents from happening in the first place. Investing in proactive educational and enforcement strategies is an important start. That's why we're establishing the Move Over Early Warning Task Force, which will study how to use 21st century technology to better help drivers safely navigate an emergency zone. The task force will deliver its findings to the General Assembly at the start of 2023. We're taking another step to put mental health front and center when it comes to supporting our first responders. Too often, discussions and resources surrounding mental illness are discouraged or stigmatized. So the Department of Human Services will be creating an online database and resource center dedicated to mental health tools specific to emergency response professionals. We want our first responders and their loved ones to know the signs, to know what they need, and most importantly, how to get help. Of course, I want to be clear that our strongest asset in protecting our law enforcement is not a law on the books. It's our people on the ground. This is a wake-up call for every resident of Illinois. Your distracted driving could be someone else's worst nightmare, and no text or other distraction is worth that. So next time you hit the road, to be clear, every time you hit the road, please remember the real risks of not honoring Scott's law. Today we are joined by Lauren Frank, the wife of State Trooper Brian Frank, who was hit by another vehicle while assisting with an accident on I-55 last February. Today, 6 months later, Brian is still fiercely fighting to recover from his injuries. Trooper Frank was simply doing his job that evening. Trooper Frank was looking out for a member of our community. The driver was not. I wish Lauren didn't have to use her voice to speak out on behalf of Brian and his fellow emergency professionals, but she has chosen to stand up and be heard, courageously so. I've had the opportunity to speak with Lauren myself, and I have to say, she is a fighter. And she's here today to share her story with all Illinoisans, so others might not have to experience what she and Brian are going through. And with that, I'd like to introduce truly one of the bravest people that I know, Lauren Frank.
Well, I'm honored to be here today for the signing of the updated Scott's Law bill. I wish I didn't have to be. But on behalf of my husband, Illinois State Trooper Brian Frank, and our families, I'm here to tell you our story in hopes that it can make a difference towards some change. Change that could save lives. If it saves even one, then sharing this difficult reality will be worth every tear that was shed writing it and reading it to you today. Scott's Law is roughly a 900-word piece of Illinois legislation that most residents of Illinois have probably never read or even heard of. As the wife of an Illinois State Trooper, I hadn't. There are pamphlets at the DMV and signs we pass on the highway. Sometimes we see or hear about it on the news. Slow down, move over, something like that. And then life goes on. But on February 15th, our entire life stood still. We woke up that morning to a winter storm warning, and I begged Brian to stay home, something he would never consider even on a sick day. He is part of a criminal patrol team that isn't required to handle crashes, but their unit decided to help support the districts that were shorthanded that day. They didn't need to work, but they chose to go anyway. My husband Brian was headed home to me when he selflessly stopped to assist one more crash. He was in a marked squad car with his lights activated. Despite the unsafe driving conditions due to the snow and the below freezing temperatures that day, someone still made the choice to drive recklessly, and that person crashed into Brian's stopped squad car at 80 miles an hour. I got the phone call that every spouse of a first responder dreads, and all they said is, "It's bad, but he's breathing." Brian suffered a severe traumatic brain injury. Despite the initial devastating prognosis from the doctors, he lived. Today, Brian remains in a minimally conscious state. The roller coaster that we've been on for 6 months has been excruciating, and it was all preventable. In the past 6 months, 178 days, we've encountered 35 doctors, 4 hospitals, 3 brain surgeries, 2 emergency room visits, 12 ambulance rides, and 8 weeks of therapy. Through all of that, I've been left deprived of relaxing days at home with my husband, nights going to bed by his side, hearing his laugh or his smile. Worst of all, I've had to survive every heartbreaking hour without the reassurance from the one person I love the most that everything is going to be okay. He does not intentionally respond to me, and I miss him every day. For anyone that is not familiar, the world of brain injury is heartbreakingly unpredictable. It's nothing like you see in the movies where they're sleeping and then they just wake up, despite how badly I yearn and pray for that to be true. For a whole week, Brian stayed in a medically induced coma, intubated and on a ventilator. On March 11th, he began to breathe on his own but remained in a coma. In the spring, he emerged to a state they call unresponsive wakefulness, which is formerly known as vegetative. Just recently, he emerged to a minimally conscious state. And while the progress is exciting, the setbacks are devastating, and the unknowns of our future are overwhelming. The daily grief sits heavily on us as we wait and watch Brian fight for his life to come back to us. And again, this was all preventable. These things are scary to experience, they're hard to hear. It's easy to live in fear, but we, Brian's family, friends, peers, and community are choosing to look at this through the lens of faith. Faith that there's a greater plan and purpose for Brian's life. And in that way, I count us lucky, because Brian is alive, and that means there is still hope for his recovery. But it is not forgotten that so many other Illinois State Troopers have lost their lives making the ultimate sacrifice while serving the public. 21 years ago, Scott's Law was established and named after Lieutenant Scott Gillen. The law is Scott's Law, but it is also Brian's Law. It's Trooper Brooke Jones's law. It's Trooper Christopher Lambert's law. It's Trooper Gerald Ellis's law. It is Trooper Ryan Palmer's law, and far too many others to list. Today, the law is changing in word, speech, and consequences so that we may change our actions and spare the trooper wife or husband, parent, sibling, friend. It's also to spare yourself. You don't want to be the person who walks around with this burden of guilt and responsibility for the rest of your life, knowing that such an accident is preventable. Brian has come a long way since February 15th, but he still has a long way to go. So does the law. The changes being made today are a step in the right direction, but there's more work to be done. 17 troopers have been hit this year. Brian was number 4. The lives of the men and women of the state police, the people you see standing behind me, they deserve more. They deserve to be protected the way they protect us, by the public and the state. How many more troopers need to get hit before we consider their safety? Who here will be next? I urge you to go home and tell your family about Scott's Law. Tell your children, tell everyone you know who drives, the importance of moving over for our police and first responders. The motto of the Illinois State Police is integrity, service, and pride. There are more words that come to mind when I think of the Illinois State Troopers, especially Brian. Romans 12:10 says, "Be devoted to one another in love and honor one another above yourselves." Trooper Brian Frank, my husband, my best friend, the love of my life, embodies these verses completely. He is devoted to others in love. He values and honors others above himself. He is selfless and humble. He looks to protect the interests of others. Our first responders count the lives of others as more precious than their own. They risk their lives for us every single day, and the simplest thing that we can do is honor them and count their lives precious too by slowing down and getting over. But I challenge you, is this the best we can do? These changes to Scott's Law need to be the starting point of a new and bigger commitment to serving our officers better. The responsibility to do more and do better is not just in the driving hands of Illinois motorists. Honoring Scott's Law is only one aspect of the defense for our officers. It starts well before that, with proper funding to ensure every officer's equipment and squad car is the most capable the market has to offer in withstanding damage. It continues after that with unparalleled medical care for officers injured in the line of duty, with coordination on behalf of that officer that removes location, length of stay, and cost from being a burden and stress to the officer's family. It is woven throughout in getting back to a state and a country that doesn't just see a uniform or a cop, but instead sees Brian, a husband, a son, a brother, a godfather, an uncle, and a best friend. Someone who has already saved countless lives and who has a lifetime of saving more ahead of him. We owe it to honor those fallen and injured, to put their best interests first. Is that not the very least that we can do to repay them for their sacrifice? If you hear nothing else today, hear this one thing. There is no greater love than laying down your life for another person. That is what Brian and every other trooper does every day. They lay it down. They lay it down for their family. They lay down their dreams. They lay down their future. They lay down their life for you. So I'm asking you today, when you get into a vehicle, lay down your distractions. Lay down your hurry. Lay down your phone. Lay it down. Choose to love one another. On behalf of everyone that loves Brian, thank you for listening today. Please keep him in your prayers, and may God bless you all. Representative Hurley.
Good morning. I did want to take a moment during the day to say a prayer for Lauren, for Brian, for the family, for the state police, also for Ella French, her family, her work family, CPD, our city, our state. It's just heartbreaking. Proud to be the sponsor of the Move Over Task Force. And Lauren makes me cry. Anyways, proud to be a sponsor. We can't legislate bad people from doing evil things. We can't stop all the accidents on the highway, but I'm going to try, and I think everybody that supports police here and first responders will try as well. So thank you, Lauren, for bringing your story. Thanks, everybody back here, State Police, Chicago Police. You do a tough job. We expect you to protect us all the time and put your life on the line for us. So thank you. Again, it's just a step. We've been tightening the screws on Scott's Law for a bit now, and we're still hearing the tragic stories of people running into people on the side of the road, like Officer Frank. So thank you. As Lauren says, lay down your distractions. And I'd like to introduce the co-chair of the bill, Leader Munoz. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Representative, for great work on this bill. I was glad to partner with you. Thank you so much. You've always been a strong supporter of first responders. Governor, thank you for doing the great bill signing this morning and having our director of the state police, our fire marshal here, and all the troopers, and our elected officials from the Senate and from the House. Thank you so much for this. To Mrs. Franks, I can't even imagine what you're going through, ma'am. But my heartfelt, my prayers will be with you and your family, and to your husband, I wish all the best. I can't even imagine. You know, it's unfortunate, as everyone that's talked earlier, but it happens, and it probably will happen again. It's unfortunate that we're going through rough times in the state of Illinois, not only in the city of Chicago, but throughout the state. Men and women who put on the badge and take the oath to uphold the law and support the communities throughout that they work in the state of Illinois. It's a shame that people are preying on them, shooting them, and they don't care. Hopefully we can get through this together. It's a shame that not only Mrs. Franks, other troopers that were killed in the line of duty, other officers in different municipalities throughout the state have been shot at, been killed at. We lost 2. We lost 1 this weekend. Young lady, 29 years old. God bless her and her family. She gave the ultimate sacrifice. And there's an officer, young man, Officer Yanez. I had the pleasure of working with his father. He worked in the 10th district while I worked in 11. And now his son is lying in the hospital with 3 bullets in his body. It's great that they caught the individuals who did this. We need to do stiffer penalties on gun laws, but we also need to take care of what we need to do for our own. Please, ladies and gentlemen, work with the police. Not everybody thinks that. People think that the police are bad. They're not. They're here to serve and protect. They took the oath of honor. So, men and women of the law enforcement throughout the state of Illinois, I will always have your back. Hold your head up high. And I can never thank you guys, to the men and women, for what you do for the state of Illinois. God bless, be safe, and thank you all for what you do. Senator Markwitt.
Thank you, Senator Munoz, and thank you to all of the people that stand behind me, first responders, and people who champion their causes. It is an honor to stand with you here today. My bill that the governor is signing today is about providing better mental health resources for all first responders. And I will tell you, over the course of the last couple of days, I have had countless discussions with first responders. And most of those conversations have revolved around the challenges that they deal with in their jobs. The weight of the world is on our first responders at the time. Their jobs are so difficult. And, you know, everything we do in government is an attempt to reform, to make things better. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do for a little while and things change. And we have to be constantly diligent to make sure that we're attending to things. I don't know what was done a couple of decades ago before I got here, but I know what's happening now. We have an epic shortage of police officers throughout our state, whether it's state troopers or Chicago, the city of Chicago, or police officers in small municipalities. We have a shortage. And that, coupled with a global pandemic, rise in violent crime, a rise in shootings and gun crime, city of Chicago canceling days off, officers working 12-hour shifts in the most difficult situations, it's no surprise that officers are dealing with substance abuse problems, mental health problems, and we see rising suicides amongst first responders. This is terrible. This bill is one measure to try and provide resources to them so that they can confidentially reach out and receive the help that they need. And I'm grateful to the governor for his signature on this bill, but I also want to take a moment to thank him for other initiatives that he has signed as well. Earlier in the budget, thanks to the advocacy of Kevin Graham from the Police Memorial Foundation, we were able to dedicate $2 million to actually not just provide resources, but to actually deliver that mental health service to police officers in the Chicago area. The governor previously signed House Bill 1777, which removes the uncertainty of what happens to an officer when they get injured, allows for a more clear and a more effective process for duty disability benefits. These are the sorts of things that we need to do to show first responders that we understand the difficulty of their situation and we understand that we need to help them, and we're going to work together to provide those. I'm grateful to stand here, as I said, with a bipartisan group of legislators, with a governor who cares about first responders, with the state troopers standing behind me. Together we are going to get through this, and we will keep working to do so. Before I invite the governor to come up and sign these bills, which I'm so looking forward to, I would ask that we all, I am a Chicago legislator, her name has been mentioned many times. I would ask that we all take a brief moment of silence to remember Ella French and to pray for the families of these officers, both her and her partner, who, as Senator Munoz said, lies in the hospital. So if you'd join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And with that, I would turn back to the governor for the bill signings.
I'd be happy to take any questions from members of the media. Well, let me first say that I stand up for our police. I believe that they are working very hard every single day out there. I have consistently stood up for our Illinois State Police. We have increased the number of troopers that are not only being trained, but that are out on the beat. I have worked hard, in fact, to upgrade the facilities, the crime-solving capabilities of our state police. So have the men and women who stand behind me stood up for that, to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the people of Illinois to keep them safe. I also know that there are differences of opinion about various provisions and bills that have been introduced in the General Assembly. But I also know that the impetus behind many of those provisions is, in fact, to keep the public safe and to stand up for our police officers. So I also want to commend people like Leader Munoz, who has spent a career in law enforcement and who now stands as a leader in the General Assembly when we have issues like this, where we're attempting to stand up for the safety and security of police all across the state of Illinois.
How do you get that message across to other members of the party, both statewide and also nationally? Maybe putting out certain messages that police say, it makes it difficult to do their job because it spreads negative sentiments.
Look, I stand up here every day. I'm happy to say the same thing I just said again, and have said it before. So, that is the message that I think we need to get out to people. Obviously there are differences of opinion about how to take on the challenges of police accountability or other issues that face the public. But, I think I've been very consistent about what I believe and what I've stood for. Well, I'm not in favor of the death penalty. I think that people who murder police officers or members of the public deserve to have the book thrown at them. And we ought to have court systems that acknowledge that fact. I think we do, for the most part, but I am not in favor of the death penalty. Don't think that that is a useful tool. Don't think that that deters people either. Mike.
This question is for Director Kelly. Obviously, you noted how many officers have been injured and sadly how many we've lost over many years due to people that don't pay attention to this. Growing up in Illinois, growing up on the south side of Chicago, I've always heard about this, but what is it going to take to get people to fully understand that they need to pay attention out there and make this change?
Well, I think it's going to take two things: education and enforcement. And that's where people like Lauren, why she's speaking up, what her message here is today. It's not to the people standing behind me. That message is directed to all the people that are watching your shows right now and about to get in their car, about to drive down the interstate, and maybe, if they listen just a little bit to what she had to say, they'll slow down, they'll move over, they'll give a damn about what's going on around them instead of being self-centered and being clueless about the people that are out there trying to protect public safety. That's the message that needs to get out there. But when that message isn't heard, we have to enforce. And we have to continue to do things like we're doing here today and tighten the parameters of Scott's law, make this easier and for a prosecutor to prosecute the way some of the language was that we're changing here today. We'll make it clear that it's not move over or slow down. It's slow down and move over. Just because you've moved over, because you saw a first responder on the side of the road, doesn't mean you get to drive like a bat out of hell in the lane that you moved over into. You still need to slow down. And just because you're slowing down doesn't mean you shouldn't also move over and give that first responder some space. So that's what this message is today. That's what everyone behind me that's here today to deliver that message, to say to them. That's why Lauren is here. But when it's not happening, we're going to enforce. And across the board, across the state, we know that as a result of a variety of things, including the pandemic, there was a dip in some ability to do that type of enforcement because we're trying to protect our people, from getting sick. But we are fully engaged again. And we know when we enforce, people get the message. We know it changes behavior. And this will help us to be able to do better enforcement. Yeah, we're doing it. We're doing it all day, every day. So you better watch out when you're out there driving. We'll be looking for you. But I will also say part of what this bill does, but has strong bipartisan support from the people that are standing here, is the next step of seeing what we can do with the technology that we all have, the cell phones that we all have, the things that you're all carrying. We can send an Amber Alert out to those phones. We can send a Silver Alert out to those phones. We can send weather warnings when you're in an area where there may be a dangerous storm or you need to have shelter. We need to be able to work with the telecommunications industry to develop the appropriate technology so that our officers, when they're on the side of the road, or other first responders on the side of the road, can send a signal into the system that people around them will know within 2 miles or 3 miles or whatever is the appropriate parameters. Be forewarned. You're entering an area where there may be a first responder. Send them a warning to slow down and move over. We have the technology as a country to be able to do this, but we need to make sure we're linking the law enforcement folks with those technical experts to develop that here and then come back to this legislature and make it a requirement that that technology should be available in this state. Yeah. Yeah, so like so many different entities, and whether it's government or private business or other agencies that use technology, we all do. There are obviously people on the dark web, folks who are bad actors that have a malicious intent, that are doing everything they can all day, every day to use existing data that's already out there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of breaches that have occurred over the past 10 years where you have a lot of data of personal information, such as name, date of birth, driver's licenses floating out there, and there are people who are trying to use that existing information from previous years to test various systems, and including all state government systems. Our folks identified people who were attempting to do that, and out of an abundance of caution, just as when someone uses your credit card unlawfully, they get your numbers and they go on a shopping spree on Amazon, or you see suddenly some purchases in Nome, Alaska, and you've never been to Nome, Alaska, the credit card company stops it, they cancel the card, sends you a new one. So the individuals that could potentially have been affected by this, possibly, we had an abundance of caution, identified what was occurring, notified them in accordance with law, canceled their card and reissued them a new card immediately. We remain on the offensive, but we know all systems, whether it's the federal government, whether it's state government, local government, private industry, are continuously under attack. We are always chasing the bad guys. That's the nature of the business, but we're going to continue to fight, and we're going to continue to be open and transparent when those things occur, so we all can work together and you all have the information you need and the policymakers have the information they need, so we can continue to adjust and improve as is needed.
I don't know the details, but I did read a piece this morning that sort of debunked the notion that the judge was making a decision entirely on their own. The prosecutors also conferred with the judge about this, and there was agreement at the court level. Look, I mean, nobody likes to see somebody get out on the street, after a crime like this has been committed. So, but I can't speak to the details enough for me to give you a view about whether the judge did something outside of the parameters of what the prosecutors recommended. Thank you.